Peace and blessings, and welcome back to another edition of The Conscience Presents. Today we're very excited. We got a good show for you. On the first segment of the show, we're going to bring you part 2 of Is a Criminal Record Affecting You or Someone You Love? We're going to talk today about the most important issue that you sitting there watching had better pay attention to. Get your pencils and papers. We have Barbara Feig. She is the director of the Pittsburgh chapter, ACLU of Pennsylvania, right here today to talk about some of the issues that if you have a criminal record or you're on parole or probation, in a halfway house maybe, or you're doing some connection to after serving a sentence, then you need to know and get rid of these myths about what your voting rights are and are not. We're going to talk about that today. It's a very serious issue. Because one thing that should make you very, very upset, especially in our neighborhoods, is the fact that none of these candidates came around to find out what's important to you. And you know what's even worse is you didn't make them. That's a problem. We're going to discuss a little bit of that too. Latiker's Corner today. For those of you coming back, we do have a co-host, Mr. James Latiker. Latiker Corner today is going to be We the People. And also don't forget the news we can't use. All this coming up on The Conscience Presents. Welcome to the show. Get your pens, get your paper. We're talking serious business here. Is a criminal record affecting you or someone you love? Come on back to the show. We'll talk about it. Peace and blessings and welcome to The Conscience Presents, a very important show for you here today as we're discussing our part 2 in a series of Is a Criminal Record Affecting You or Someone You Love? Today with us we have a very special guest and a very important guest, so I hope you're sitting there and you got your pens and papers ready to take down this information so that you can begin to break the myth. And the myth being that if you have a criminal record or you're serving probation or you're on parole that you cannot vote in Pennsylvania. And we're going to break this myth down and we're going to start getting some of these things laid out straight for you. So who better can do that than our special guest today, who is Barbara Feig. She is the director of the ACLU Pittsburgh chapter of Pennsylvania. Very important person who knows what is going on and what's not going on. Barbara, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you.
Glad to be here.
Tell us about what you do at the ACLU. People hear about the ACLU quite, all the time in the big cases of things dealing with civil law, correct?
Right.
Tell us what you do as a director.
Sure. I do everything except the actual legal work.
Okay.
So I'm looking to work a lot with our public education programs and our community organizing programs, trying to inform people as to what their civil liberties are.
Okay.
If you don't know what your rights are, you don't know when they're violated.
Exactly.
And we want to protect you when your rights are violated. Come to us. But until you know what they are, we can't help you. So we try to get the word out about what your civil liberties are, about freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, the right to vote being one of the things that we also do some work in.
Well, let me ask you something about yourself. What got you interested into the ACLU and how did your career path steer you into this very important work?
Sure, a little bit more on the personal side of that. Both of my parents were survivors of the Holocaust in Europe during World War II.
Wow.
So I was raised with a sense of tolerance and acceptance and understanding at a gut level the impact of discrimination and hatred. And so I've always had a life of trying to do service that at least promoted the opposite of those things.
You know, often you hear people talk about why they do something, and I'm listening in your voice, and I know I can relate with you with that, because this is not a passion with you. Because, as I say, anybody can have a passion, you know, to do this or that. This is a conviction. You don't have this. This has you.
Absolutely.
And therefore, you know, am I hitting that nail on the
Yeah,
head? I can
absolutely.
hear it in your voice
Yeah.
when you say that. Meet Mr. James Latiker, the co-host of The
How you
Conscience
doing?
Presents.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Great.
James, you got a question?
Well, yeah, I was listening. We were talking earlier about this situation with the criminal background, and I wanted to know. And you just mentioned about the parole officers and people of that sort
Right.
not dispensing proper information.
Well,
What's
with
going
all
to be
due-
done about that?
With
I
all
mean,
due respect to sort of case managers and parole and probation folks, they have a lot of information to keep up on, and the law has changed in the last couple of years. The bottom line around whether or not you can vote if you have a criminal record is this. You can vote. The only time you cannot vote is if you are currently serving time on a felony conviction. If you are in a prison or a jail serving a sentence on a felony conviction, no, you cannot vote. If you are serving time on a misdemeanor, you can still vote. You have to do it by absentee ballot. They're not going
Wow.
to let you out to the voting booth. But if you're in county jail on a misdemeanor, you can still vote. You have to get an absentee ballot. If you are on probation or parole, if you're in a community setting, completing your sentence in a community setting or halfway house, you can vote. And if you've been convicted of any misdemeanor, there's no restrictions whatsoever. As I said, even if you're still in jail, you can vote.
this is sort of astonishing to me. Now, unless someone
Why is it astonishing? Why is it astonishing to you?
Well, it's astonishing that, because see, I was incarcerated, myself, and I know that if you don't find out information on your own, you're not going to get it. What if an inmate or former inmate, say someone who's in jail, finds this information out and they take it to the powers that be? What do you think is going to happen?
Depends on the powers that be, but hopefully they will be accepting of that and will get you a voter registration form. In the past number of years, there have been a couple of efforts to go into, in particular into Allegheny County Jail, I know, to distribute voter registration forms to folks. Now the registration deadline has passed already for this general election in November. But there have been some efforts previously to go in and to get inmates registered, those who will either be out by election day or who are serving time for misdemeanors.
So let me get this straight,
that-
Barbara. Let's lay this out right here. You're saying that anyone who is not officially serving and actually in doing that time
Correct.
has the ability to vote
Correct. Period, end of sentence.
if they're serving in a halfway house.
Yes.
Or some program of probation or parole nature after they come out of
Right,
incarceration, they still have a right to vote.
correct. That is in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Different states have different laws, but in Pennsylvania, that is the situation.
What I would like to know from your opinion, your professional opinion, how do these myths of not being able to vote when you come out of jail, how have these been able to regenerate themselves over the years?
There have been, in the last 10 years, the law around voting rights for ex-offenders have changed 2 times in the last 10 years. So there is some aspect here of keeping up. And
On whose part?
well, there's a good
Both.
question. Has the state Department of State, which controls elections and registrations and voter registrations, and the county election boards, have they done a really great job of getting this kind of information out? Maybe not. And,
Let me interrupt right here. I sort of have a little different take. I'm a little cynical. I think there's a concerted effort not to give you this information.
But the information's there. I mean, if the legislation has changed twice, then this is public record. But is it a matter of not doing a well enough job of getting this information out to the public?
I think that a lot of the folks who are working with folks reintegrating into society, coming out of these facilities, have a whole lot on their plate, and they probably get bulletins every day with a sheet of paper, and this was just one more. We've done some trainings over the years
That's
for
a poor
probation.
excuse.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I
mean,
can't explain
I'm
why
not saying
somebody
that
else,
it's your reason to sit here and make an excuse.
right.
But what I'm saying is it has to be more than that. I mean,
Well,
not to add weight to what you're saying here. I'm really not doing that either, but I'm just saying that, I mean, it makes some sense what he's saying. I mean, these are major changes in legislation that are affecting a lot of lives.
That's right.
This
lot of
information should
lives.
be common knowledge. There's no way a myth that you
Thi-
can't
this-
vote after you come out of jail
This
should
is
be able to
why
perpetrate.
this is why I'm of the persuasion that there is a concerted effort not to dispense this information. I'm looking at it. Let's say if I were an inmate, and let's say if I'm going to register for one party, maybe I might get a little help. Say if I want to register with the other party, I might not get any help. I mean, there's a lot of ramifications behind this. I mean, this is it. To me, it's appalling. To me, it's appalling. But then again, I have my own proclivities towards that. I mean, having been incarcerated and having had to defend my own self, I know what the system is all about.
Well, when we come back, we're going to talk to Barbara about one more thing, and that is the future and where you see whether reform is necessary here in this state when it comes down to some of these rights. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the other issues, housing and child care and even jobs. We'll throw a little something in the pot with that just to get some of your professional expertise. This is The Conscience Presents. I'm Dave Adams. We are talking about a very serious subject here as part 2 of Does a Criminal Record Affect You or Someone You Love? Right here on The Conscience Presents. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Plant inspiration. Provide youth with the creative tools and skills to cultivate it. And you'll be amazed at what can grow. Adobe Youth Voices and the Peapod Foundation. Learn more at plantandinspire.org.
Welcome back to The Conscience Presents. We are sitting here bringing the facts to you. I hope you have heard this, and if you haven't, we're going to tell you sure enough again. And we're talking about part 2 in our series of Does a Criminal Record Affect You or Someone You Love? We're here today with the director of the ACLU chapter, Pittsburgh chapter of Pennsylvania, who is here to talk about the facts and breaking the myths down. Can you? Once you come out of jail, once you are serving on parole and probation, do you have the right to vote? And can you vote? Now, registration period is only 15 days till this election. I think the registration period is over for now, but when it comes down to the next election, which I believe is a general election, you better be registered and start thinking about becoming a part of the process. You want to sit around and complain about jobs. You want to sit around and complain about opportunities. The opportunity starts with you, and that is being aware of what your rights and what your regulations are, what your procedures are, and everything that you need to do to make yourself a productive citizen, because nobody's going to hand it to you, that's for sure. So we're here with Barbara. Barbara, I want you to look in that camera, number 3, right?